Welcome this evening to this coffee chat where tonight we have social media expert Sveta, who's going to talk to us about lots of stuff about going online with your business and how social media can support you and lots of other things we're going to have a chat about. So let me just introduce you to Sveta. So Sveta, please say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, Marilyn. Thanks so much for having me over for your lovely coffee chat. I've got my tea nice and ready, so ready to go. So as you kindly suggested, I've been working in social media for quite some time, so over 6 up to 7 years now. And I've done it both for corporates and small companies. And so at the moment, I've launched a business to help specifically coaching and training businesses do exceptionally well on social media. And win the clients that they really want to win through social media.
Okay, that sounds great. So did you say how long you're doing that for?
So for about 6, 7 years
Six,
now.
yeah,
I
wonderful.
started, yeah.
So you're well ahead of the curve. Like, some of us have only just sort of started getting into social media and, especially online businesses this year. And I suppose thinking about that, people have been going online or had been kind of forced to go online this year. What would you say are some of the problems that people have experienced going online, or anybody that you might have helped? Like, what are the maybe common things that people have come up against?
Well, you're exactly right in saying that because of what's been happening with the world and the global pandemic, a lot of companies are kind of forced to go online, and maybe that's not something they've done before, and they found other ways to find their clients and run their businesses. But what I am seeing a lot of is specifically coaching and training businesses learning to master social media and really struggling with it, because if you think about it, they would much rather be focusing on their passion and running the business side of things, but they're to do a lot more marketing. So they're struggling with really basic things like writing engaging captions, putting out content consistently that's going to help them connect with their ideal customers and essentially convert them to make sales.
Yeah. And you're right, I've also gone online myself this year and certainly have had some interesting times from when I first started. The frustration of trying to figure out how to create content, how to maybe use tools like Canva, or how to put a post on Instagram and what you're supposed to do, and then just trying to add the hashtags to make sure it went up with my post and all this craziness. And there were times it took me hours really to get a video or a creation organized. But what's cool about, like, the progress that I've gone through is I actually really love it now. I really enjoy being able to be creative, being able to put together, like, even these Zoom backgrounds that I create now. It's actually quite fun for me to go on and try, and it's almost like art, like when you're a child kind of thing. You could create something, but it's all digital, of course.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to say you're probably ahead of the curve because you do know about tools like Canva and you're using them and you're actually enjoying the process. And that's a really great spot to be at. And it's good to have that self-awareness and reflection of how far you've come, because a lot of the time what happens is I'm seeing a lot of these kind of overwhelmed entrepreneurs who really want to understand social media, who want to figure out which platforms they need to be on and how to best utilize them. But I just, as you say, spending hours and hours trying to get to grips with it and just really struggling with it, not enjoying it. And there's always kind of two options with that. They can either kind of upskill and learn how to do social media specifically really well for their business and how to make it one of their sales channels, or kind of outsource and let someone else come in that's right for their business and let them do that for them so that they can put more kind of hours back into actually running their business, actually training and coaching and doing the thing that they're really most passionate about. Because I
Mm.
think there's this myth that, if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to do everything yourself and you've got to be amazing at it. And it's just not true, because I mean, I've gone through it with myself. Yes, like marketing and social media is my passion and background, and I can do that really well for myself. But there's maybe other parts of my business, like my accounting, that I outsource. And I'm happy to do that because I want to focus on the thing I really enjoy doing the most, which is helping my clients.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and so what about people that maybe are, and entrepreneurs often don't have like lots of access to cash. So they might be like time rich, for example, rather than cash flow rich. How can you work or help those people? Like, do you have something that you can do for beginners that are struggling in the early stages and have, a lot of time and just frustrated, really?
Well, I think there's a, for myself, how I work with clients, that there's a variety of packages, and there's, and whether you, if you don't want someone to run your social media for you, but you want to learn, there are always coaching options available, and there's free events and workshops that I run. But essentially it's about figuring out what your strategy is, where your clients are, which social media platform you should be on, or several if you have the time, and just following along the strategy, figuring out if, for example, you're on Instagram, how to have an engaging bio, how to create content on a consistent basis that you're putting out there that people are actually engaging with, not just putting out there to look pretty, because that's really, it's really appealing for an online social media network like Instagram. But essentially you want to be converting, you want to be engaging, you want to be building a community of people that could essentially at one point in the future become your clients.
Exactly. So is there a platform specific that, people should get started on? Like, is there a platform that's, if you're this type of business that you should use this one, or how does it work for people that are beginners?
Well, I think if you're a complete beginner, the best kind of advice I can give you is always go and research your target market. And it's okay if you don't know 100% who you want your customers to be, but if you think about maybe who you want to buy from you or has bought from you in the past, or maybe if you're somebody who's quit your corporate job to then go and start a business, and you're looking and you're wondering kind of who were your customers before, that's a good starting point. So always go away and do your research and find out what's actually the best social media network for where your clients already are, because it's very easy to say, oh, for example, if you're a personal training business, it's really important to be on Instagram because it's all about photo and video, and you want to showcase your clients what you can do, and that's all well and good. But actually your personal training business could be for moms over uh, you know moms with young families over 45 who actually love to be on Facebook from a particular country or demographic. So that's why it's always good to research first and figure out where is your audience, and then go and invest your time and energy into that platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I know we've just had somebody join us. Just if you want to ask some questions, just type in the chat box, and I'll open up the conversation to you. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm also going to keep watching as we're on live on Facebook to if any comments or any questions come in there. I just make sure. It's just trying to mute, but it's not working. Cool. So yeah, thanks. That's really good. So people really need to start sort of looking at need to be clear about their business and what they're doing, don't they, before they can start really. And then I guess, like you say, their ideal client and understanding where they are. So that's a really good point that you make about, certain age groups might appeal better or work better on a particular platform. So there's no point being on a platform that you're struggling with, trying to figure out how to use if it's not that familiar with you and that's not your target audience.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's very rarely is it about age. It's more about the particular interest or your particular niche, which is why I say it's so good to go away and do the research, because a lot of people feel, oh, I should be on Instagram because it's one of the most populated social media networks, or I should be on LinkedIn because it's best for professionals. But it's about taking that stress out of it, because you shouldn't go and do something that someone just told you to do because you heard it's good. It's always good to go away and do the research. Well, who are your clients? Where are they? What are their interests? Where are they spending their time? What problems and challenges they're facing? Because if you can address those on a platform they're already talking about it, or if there's a particular online magazine they subscribe to, or newsletter or something like that, if you can find that information out, that's so super useful to you. And sometimes it can be that even though your clients are interested in your particular service, they may have other pain points related to it, so that's a great way to find them as well. And one of the best things that I often recommend to people is look at your industry specific hashtags, because whether you're using a platform like Facebook or Instagram, you can always have a look at what those people are posting about in relation to. So whether that's somebody who's a competitor or a potential client, that's a good way to kind of figure out, oh, okay, so they might also be having a problem with this. So maybe I should go and look into this and find more of my niche target audience there as well.
Yeah. Well, there's so much that you really have to do when you get started and you go online. I suppose, like, I mean, that's the first step, isn't it? Trying to figure out which is your platform and then who are your clients and what's the service that you're providing for them. So what if people were trying to put a strategy together, is that where they start really? Is that, like, the first thing that you're talking about, the research? There's probably lots of stuff that they need to research in.
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do before I even do the research is figure out where you are as a company and what are your what are your main goals and aims, because that will help you with social media. So it could be that you are starting out business and you're not actually ready to make sales through social media, but you want to get your name and your brand out there. You want to get people talking about you. You want them to get to understand you, and you want to take them on that journey of, actually, this is how I'm developing my business, and this is all the new things that we're launching. So you really need to sit down and figure out, okay, where am I at with my business? What are my business goals? And then you can tie those into your social media goals. If you're ready to start making sales and you want to do that for a social media platform, okay, maybe that's what you're going to go do. And so from that point on, then you go away, you research your market, you look at what's really important to them, you look at what their pain points are, how you can address those, and that will help you to start figuring out which social media network should I be on, how often can I post in a way that I can be consistent. Because if you look at, and as a social media person, this is what I spend time doing, if you look at the T's and C's and what the social media platforms say themselves, sometimes the expectations can be quite unrealistic. They might say, for example, oh, you should be posting 3 times a day in order to get the engagement you want. And engagement is great because it converts to clients. But the reality is, if you're somebody who's a really busy entrepreneur who's also, trying to develop systems in your business, you're trying to develop course content, you're not going to have the time to do that. So you have to sit down and figure out, right, how can I add value by posting in a consistent way? And how often can I do this? So then you're looking at, okay, well, what content can I put together? How often I can do that? And of course, then you're also looking at, okay, once you've posted the content and once you started doing this regularly, look at the analytics and the feedback and engagement you're getting, because it could be that your audience might not resonate with your content so much. Maybe they prefer it in a different format. So looking at your analytics is really important. And then always going back to, okay, this worked, this didn't, let me tweak it, let me try something new here and there. And that's essentially, it's called a social media strategy, but we have this as part of any other business process. You go out, you test and trial something on a consistent basis, and then you look at the results and see if you need to change anything, or if it's giving you the results that you already want.
Yeah, trial and error. It's part of everything really that we've learned, I think, in from school, even in uni. I remember learning lots of that stuff, test and trial and error. Um, so that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think maybe people think that there is some rules or some like a out of the box. If I do this, then I'm going to get a result. And so what's interesting for people to realize is that actually it's unique, or it's about you, and it's about your business, and it's about how your audience, what they're after, what they're looking for, isn't it? So you really have to know what your ideal client is after. You can't just create something and try to push it out the door and expect that's what they want if you've not researched it.
Exactly. And Marilyn, I can't tell you how important that is, because if you're somebody who's starting out a business, whether you're doing life coaching, whether you're training, helping people upskill, your time is already divided between all the different areas of your business. You're probably quite time poor, I would say, to some extent too. You could have a young family, you could have other things that you've got going on in your life. So you don't really want to spend hours and hours on social media trying to figure it all out. So the best thing to do is to kind of not let it overwhelm you, to not let it stress you out, to get to a place where it's nice and simple. You're doing as least, like, you're kind of putting in the least amount of effort as possible, but actually getting the results you want. And the way that you do that is essentially by not buying into a lot of the content and the kind of free training that's out there that's telling you, actually, you can buy followers here and you can do this, and
Mm.
here's a quick fix. Because I think when you're an entrepreneur who's really kind of overwhelmed and you're trying to squeeze the most out of every single minute, it's so easy to buy into a scheme like that, or a product, or a free YouTube video out there, but it's very generic. It's probably not going to be very specific to your business, and it's probably not going to get you the results that you want, because as an entrepreneur, you know that your business is not an overnight success. And it's the same on Instagram. There's no golden rule or golden nugget that's going to make you go viral in one night. That happens with brands and with accounts that have put in the work and have done a lot of trial and error over and over again. So it's very kind of tempting to be like, oh, but I'm promised this, I should go for this. But none of the things that where you're promised that, none of them work that way. So it's always best to actually go away and then find, maybe, because there's a lot of social media experts and coaches out there, find the one that you resonate with. Look at what training they offer. Do they help in your particular industry? And can you kind of relate to them? Can you learn from them and kind of go with one person's advice? Because what can happen is you can kind of shop around a lot and try something here, but nothing consistently enough. And then you're kind of frustrated. And again, back to the overwhelmed entrepreneur thinking, why is this not working? I've done A, B, and C, but you're not following a consistent system. So
Mm.
that's what I say.
Yeah, and you're right. There is so much information out there. You can find like strategies from different people on, one person saying one thing and someone saying something completely different, and then there's a YouTube video telling you how to do this, or and I suppose it is confusing. So I think that's really good advice that you give, to try and find one person who you resonate with and start off trial and error with what they're teaching and see how that works for you, really. And if it doesn't work, you just try something else, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you're gonna probably learn a lot more, a lot quicker by following one system than trying to follow many. And I think, as especially with trainers and coaches that I work with, they tend to have their own product, their own system that they follow and they recommend to their clients. And they would agree that, if they're selling a particular type of coaching or a particular program, they're probably telling their clients, look, you've got to follow something consistently for a certain amount of days, or for a certain amount of time a day, in order to see that result. If you're going to try something as a one-off, it's very unlikely to work straight away. That's not how coaching works, and it's the same with social media. It's just not how it works. But of course, the things that make the big news articles and the things that go viral are the things that look like they're an overnight success, and that's just not true. And I think it's so important to be authentic and honest, and kind of give people that honest picture of how things are going to work, because you just don't want to be kind of disappointing them, but also you don't want to let them buy into a false sense of hope, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you're right. You do see these overnight successes, which have taken really years to get to be an overnight success. But what we haven't done is we haven't seen all the struggle and turmoil and all the years and hours of effort that they've put in to get to that point where they've broken through, and they're right there in front of us, looking like they've made it really easily. And we think, oh, well, that's what I'll do, and it'll be tomorrow. I'll have all my clients. But you're right, nothing in life is like that, is it? Everything is a learning experience, and you do have to go through a lot of iterations to get to, an end result that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's true. And for some people it's a little bit quicker than others, but you have to also take into account that maybe somebody has been in that industry or run a similar company before, or maybe even just had the work experience in that particular area before. And it's just, it's just kind of taking all of these things into account, because it's, as I say, it's very easy to see a company post a video that goes viral, but they don't actually know how much, they've tried. Like I say, there's all the trial and error that goes behind it. And then often people don't realize as well that they think that for a lot of people, they're beginning to understand social media a lot more clearly now. But for some people, it's kind of still seen as a new shiny toy where, like, minimal effort with minimal effort, you can do anything you want, you can get all the results that you want. And that's true, but it's true for the people who have had all of that years of experience. If you're going to go in and try things for yourself from scratch, of course there's going to be some things that work and some things that don't. It's not it's not a magic button that you just press. It's still a profession. Social media is essentially just a new form of marketing that's all about online. It's more engaging. It depends on, obviously, what kind of style and what channel you follow, but it's still something that has some knowledge and technique behind it. It's not just it's to say a magic button that you press. And I think That's the one thing that I could say to people as well, is just to realize that, because again, it can be quite disheartening to just kind of buy into, oh, but this person's got this many followers and this many comments, and they're selling all of this. But it could be actually that they're a really successful business model, that's a really strong brand name, that when they do set up a social media profile, their customers find them really easily, and it's really easy for them to kind of make those kind of sales. Because by the time that Instagram came about, for example, Coca-Cola was a massive company. So if we go back to kind of coaching, Tony Robbins, for example, was already a very well-known coach, so it's very easy for them to get kind of that publicity and that engagement straight away. And
And
it's
everybody knows them then, so they like them and follow them, and it's, free kind of little clips of information or whatever, isn't it? So you're right. Like, I mean, they're already an established name, and so I suppose thinking about that for some other brands, like those companies or some of those people have got a team of experts who are in the social media department. Like you say, like an entrepreneur has got a one-man band maybe, and they've got to try and wear every hat in the business. Whereas, if it's someone like maybe Tony Robbins, he's probably got a whole marketing team who have got, a list of, I've got to create the social media content today for this platform or this platform. So he can be prolific, which maybe does look simple because it's just under his brand.
Exactly. And I think there's lots of great profiles out there like that, but it's not something that people realize. And it's like, for example, a lot of people resonate with Gary Vee and his content, and his kind of mode is very much hustle, hustle, hustle. But again, he has a whole team that help him do that. And I think that there's another important thing to note, where if you are a one-man team, as I say, you figure out your researching, you figure out which social media platform you need to be on. Just choose one to begin with. You don't need to be present on all of them. Just choose one and put in all your time and effort into that, and do that really well, because then you can build that community. Then you can take them, you can get them to subscribe to your email list. You can kind of build them through that way. You can invite them to your events. You can take that kind of market and build from there. Whereas if you're trying to do 5 different platforms, or even 2, if you're somebody who just who doesn't have that much time to kind of figure out and master, because obviously social media networks are all different. So it's very easy to say, like, I want to be present on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, as an example, but do you have the time to master and learn how to do all of these? And that can be off-putting, which is why I say they either go down the route of hiring somebody who's a social media manager, and there are different options, whether they might not want somebody monthly, they might just want to hire someone they can kind of have a 2-hour weekly session where they can ask specific questions. Or they go down the route of actually learning, right, so what do I need to know about Instagram for my particular niche? How do I get the engagement that I want? How do I start converting to sales that I want? So it's important as well to note that, to not just try and jump on be on everything. It doesn't work that way, because they're all going to need time and effort. And you can't essentially repost the same thing on one platform to all the others and keep your content and style and format exactly the same.
So when you're helping people in their social media or their marketing, do you help them across any platform? Like, do you have specific ones that you are like that you really kind of focus on, or do you go cut across quite a few?
So when I start working with people on social media, again, if there's somebody who is in the very kind of beginning startup phase, unless they know exactly what it is they're looking for, I always try and take them through the strategy. I have a specific strategy session that I run with startups, where I help them identify where their target audience is, and where they're more likely to be able to sell and kind of build that community. But my main focus is Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Those are the 4 that I spend most time on, and that I specialize in, and that I'm able to help kind of my clients with as well.
Yeah. Well, that's quite nearly all, like, well, loads of them anyway, So, I mean, I hear loads of people talking about, oh, you need to get, now that there's reels on Instagram, you need to get on TikTok. It's the same thing. And I'm like, that's a platform that I've kind of always, I guess I've avoided. And I think it was called Musically, I
Yes.
think, before TikTok bought it out. And I think my thought about it, because I wasn't on it, was like it was a music kind of platform, and just clips and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it's really changed because I'm not on it. But do you know anything about that platform? What would you comment about that platform?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of had to keep up with all this stuff, and we've had so much since TikTok, and we've had Clubhouse, which is another kind of recent one that got rebranded. But the thing with it is exactly as you say. The thing with TikTok is it started out as a kind of lip syncing music platform, and evolved to something where you can make short, funny clips and videos to kind of engage your audience. The large kind of majority of the audience on there is the kind of teen tween up to kind of, I'd say 21, from what I'm seeing, what I'm and the experience that kind of I have of it. But there are different niches that are beginning to form on it, whether you're a really great photographer, or whether you're somebody who's I don't know, a bridal boutique kind of wedding company. So you just have to find your target niche and start creating content and putting kind of like a more quirky, more fresh, more young perspective on it. And if you're
Mm,
somebody who, again, who either wants to do that yourself, or you have somebody helping you do that, then it's great to be on that platform. But I would not suggest it for somebody who's jumping on it because it's a nice new flashy platform. Yes, there's a lot of users on it and it's picking up a lot of traction, but that's not to say that you're not having a lot of users on Instagram or Facebook who are still doing pretty well, and they're not as popular. But if your audience is on there and you don't have the time to make these really fun, quirky videos and do it right, there's no point of you being on there, because your content is not going to get the engagement and the views that you want it to
mm,
get, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's always fun and kind of worth to go on it just to check out, kind of to look, just to see what's happening, because you do kind of get a lot of creative ideas, a creative edge. But you do need a team, or you need somebody who has experience doing that, to make it fun and engaging, as I say.
So that's a really good point that you make there, that actually pique your creativity by just having a look at what other people are doing on other platforms, even ones if you're not going to use them, just have a look anyway. Because maybe you don't know if that's where your target audience is. It's certainly not my target audience, that younger bracket there, for feminine leadership. But yeah, so interesting. But so if I wanted to find out about a platform, what would I do? Like, just to get some kind of insight about what it was all about, really. Like, apart from just like logging onto it, could I do some research and find something?
So I think the easiest way I would actually say is to create an account, even if it's just a dummy account, even if you don't post much. So for example, I have a TikTok, I have a Snapchat. I don't use it personally so much, but I'll go out there and I'll check things out. And the best way to do that is actually to just have an account. As I say, you can still have your brand name, and it's actually really good for you to go in and maybe set up, um, if you think maybe one day you'll be on Snapchat, to go and set up an account with your name to make sure that you can kind of have that username that is kind of relevant and the same to your brand name. But you don't necessarily have to post anything. And the best way is always to research through hashtags. So if you're new to the platform, for example, TikTok will always just recommend a lot of things that you can look at. And if it's not relevant to you, you can always search for something like life coaching, or leadership, or women in business, and things like that. And then you'll get a lot of relevant content coming your way that would be really interesting for you. And you'll find that actually maybe it's not that kind of 12 to 21 audience. It's somebody maybe in their 30s and 40s and a lot later. You just have to go
Mm,
out there and find it. And the best way to do that is just to think of, well, how would, if I was looking for kind of leadership, how would it be described? Would it be described as, managing my team? Would it be, you have kind of think of like the keywords, almost as if you're doing SEO work. Like, how would something be described? How would my client or target customer describe something? And then go and search for that in keyword form. And that's a good way to kind of get that kind of feel and see what's on there. And it could be actually that what a lot of what I've seen a lot of people do is, you can go on a platform like TikTok, look at what's happening in the, I don't know, in the business sphere there, or in the life coaching sphere, and look at what they're talking about, look at the ideas they're putting out, and maybe you can do something around that, but on Instagram. And another thing that you mentioned, for example, yes, there's a new feature of Reels on Instagram. Is, again, it's important to figure out, what are you best at? If you are a sole trader and your business is a service, so you're the main person providing your service, you need to be quite visible on Instagram. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to need to post a bunch of selfies, but people need to see the person behind the business, because that's how they connect and build that connection. And if you're somebody who's really comfortable with just doing a short video or a photo, and that's all you want to post, and that's all that you know how to do and have the desire to do, stick with that. Don't feel the pressure that you have to try stories and reels and IGTV if you're not ready for that, and if you can't do that consistently. Because if it's not for you and you can connect with your audience for another way, just stick maybe to one or two features that you can do really well and do them really well, as opposed to like push yourself out there and feel the pressure to try all these things, which will take you kind of hours to spend on that social media platform. And again, it's taking time away from your business and it's creating more stress for you in your life. Don't do that to yourself. Make it simple. Make it really simple.
Yep. Yeah, that's great advice. So what, thinking about, like, I mean, you're obviously quite familiar with online. Have you had to adapt to the last year really with your business online? Like, have you had to go, this is what used to work, and actually things have changed and there's something different that I needed to do?
Yes. So actually, for somebody who works in social media, I used to work a lot behind the scenes. So I would actually get my clients through face-to-face networking events. I would go to face-to-face networking events. I felt like I could really connect with my potential clients more that way, because they get to know me, they get to listen to me, and I get to meet a variety of different people that way. That was what I was used to. So that's what I did a lot before. The current situation. And so I didn't really have a very strong or consistent online presence because I prefer to spend my time doing that for my clients. And what I found is that I can't go to networking events. There are no networking events. So I had to take my whole business online, which is what I'm teaching, obviously, all of these coaching and training companies to do. I've had to create my own online presence. And I'm kind of going through it as I'm teaching people as well. So I found that the best thing to do really is just to start in one place, make it really simple. So even though I specialize in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, I've put my energy into Instagram because that's what I can do on a consistent basis. If you do look me up, I'm present on all those other networks as well, but I've chosen the platform where I feel like my customers are and where I'm getting the most engagement. So I think, again, stick to one platform, keep it simple, and just try and learn what you can do consistently. If you think about, again, going back to using lots of different platform features or being present on too many networks and trying to do it and letting it overwhelm you, you're just going to stress yourself out. You're taking time away from other parts of your business and you're not doing the passion and the reason that you started the business in the kind of first place. And I think that can be quite sad because a lot of the people have realized during the pandemic that they do have certain passions, that the way of working and their life has changed. And a lot of people have started up businesses. And a lot of them, especially in the coaching sector, can find it quite disheartening if they're pushing and pushing and marketing themselves, and they're just not getting that engagement and they're not getting that response, which could essentially lead to them not making sales and maybe even giving up on that hope and dream. And that's the sad part, because they could be going out there and making a huge difference with what they do, but they're just not necessarily having the opportunity because they don't have the right marketing set in place. So they're creating that additional stress for themselves. So keep it simple. Start with something simple, follow a system, and see how it works for you.
So that's a really amazing insight that you gave there about, people who have gone online and then are not getting engagement really. Like, so they're putting in all this effort and they may be getting frustrated then because, they thought it was easier than than it looked maybe, or and like, in the last 12 months, people have sort of had no choice, like having to shift to another way of trying to connect with people. So what would you recommend to somebody like who gets themselves caught up in that sort of anger and frustration? And obviously we don't want them to give up on their business, which would be the worst sort of outcome. Would you recommend that they come and find someone to help, or what would you recommend?
The first thing I would recommend is actually probably something most people in my industry will not talk about, but that has helped me a lot. And is part of the reason why I enjoy working with coaches and trainers so much, is because it's made such a difference in my life. Before you get to the place where it's too overwhelming, where you're stressing about your marketing, where you're figuring out how do I fit all of these things into my day, to just take a step back. And something that I do that works for me really well is I do these 15-minute silences. And somebody who's got too many loud noises and questions and clutter in their head, I literally set a timer on my phone and I just try to find something to concentrate on, whether it's a lovely bouquet I have in my house or a candle. And I just try and stare at that if I find it really hard to quieten the voices in my head. And once I give myself that silence, I can then go away and think clearly. So before I bombard you with information, that's what I'd say. Just go take that breather for yourself, because it might feel like you're wasting time and you might be scared about, as I say, squeezing everything that you can out of every minute. But you need that space and quiet in order to actually come up with these brilliant ideas and figure out what you're going to do next. You're not going to get out of the problem with the same thinking that got you into the problem, I think is a really good quote I heard somewhere.
Yeah.
Just give yourself that breather, 15 minutes, okay, maybe 5 or 10 if you're really strapped, but just do that for yourself, because that will help you see with more clarity. And then from there, I would say, do always figure out what you need to do for your business on a daily basis that is the most critical. So setting up a priority list, maybe it's the thing that brings in the money, maybe it's the thing that's most time critical, and break it down to small bite-sized chunks. In there, you will realize that there's a marketing piece missing, there's a sales piece missing. And when you do set aside the time to go work on your marketing, that's when you figure out, right, so for example, before you do any research, you might think my clients are on Instagram or they're on Facebook. So I'm going to go and I'm going to try to find somebody who does Facebook or Instagram really well. Now that could be a competitor, but I would probably say it's better off trying to find someone who's a coach, because if you're going to go with a competitor, it's going to be really hard to not copy the things that they do, and you probably have great content and program and coaching yourself, but you don't want to be comparing yourself. Whereas if you go find a coach or someone like myself who teaches this stuff, they're actually going to be giving you insights specific to your industry. You can work with them, they can help you find a tailored solution unique to yourself. So that's what I'd say. Go on the platform that you think your clients are at. It's just a guess, and just type in, I don't know, Facebook expert or social media manager, and see what comes up. See what kind of people you resonate with. Do you like their vibe? Do you like the advice they're giving? And start from there. Make it really simple, and don't feel like it's a bad thing, or maybe you're not good enough. It's got nothing to do with that. It's just the fact that you're a life coach, and your specialty is a life coach. And so people come to you for that. And it's okay that maybe you're not sure where your marketing's at. It doesn't make your service or what you do any less than. It's just that, just like I go to an accountant to help me sort out my finances, you go to somebody else to help you sort out your marketing. And it's as simple as that.
Go to the hairdresser to get a haircut rather than trying to do
Exactly.
it yourself.
Right.
Like, gosh. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, we maybe need to think about social media in a different way, because perhaps some people think that maybe because social media has kind of grown up through a younger generation, and we've kind of over the years got onto, like, Facebook was probably the opening gambit really in the whole social media thing. 2007 I was on it. I don't know when it first started. And I found it really useful because I was living overseas from my family, so it was a good way of being able to connect with people. But yeah, I guess we kind of think about, like you said, go to a hairdresser for a haircut, go to an accountant to help you with your books, but maybe don't think go to somebody who actually specializes in marketing and social media who can help you, because we kind of think, oh, as a small business, I've got to do everything myself, but not realizing that there are people on these platforms who've got expertise that sell services and give advice on how to get your business into a better shape.
And I think one of the things that a lot of I hear a lot of clients say as well is we've kind of covered how you won't get like overnight success on social media. But the other thing to consider as well is, because social media is free, unless you're running paid ads or paying, I don't know, for premium features for the social networks that have that, there's this kind of misconception that because it's free, it should work and it should be amazing and there's minimal effort required. And it's this misconception that yes, it's free and yes, you can do paid ads, but you need to figure out how to do it. So that doesn't mean that you have to spend hours and hours. Again, go find a coach if you want to save yourself time. Because a lot of coaches like myself, we give out a lot of really useful tips on our social media profiles, which you could follow along, even if you don't have the ability to kind of go for a subscription model or hire somebody for an hour or whatever it is that you want to do. So what we teach you is we tell you how to do things in a way that kind of collapses those time frames, because it's really easy to think, oh, it's because it's free, but why isn't it working? But are you doing things the right way? Is it specific to your audience? Are they engaging? I think engagement is that key thing, because as soon as they start engaging with you, they can be your potential target audience. So it's just important to remember that it's not going to be something that because it's free, it's going to be super easy. I think it's because we're so used to like old traditional ways of marketing where you had to pay so much for like a billboard advertisement or to be on TV, that they think, oh, this should be so simple because it's free. But just because it's free doesn't mean that it's something that you can learn to do really quickly. For some people, it just takes a little bit more time. And there's certain hacks and things as well that people who have been doing it for years are more likely to know and understand and teach.
Yeah, so that's interesting, like talking about billboards and stuff. Have you, were you doing that sort of, I guess, advertising or, like putting ads in newspapers and doing that sort of stuff before you got into the online social media?
So I didn't do that specifically, but I worked with companies who did a lot of print media, did a lot of kind of digital web things like that. And we had bigger departments who would focus on the kind of the big, spreads on the billboards and things like that. And it
Mhm.
was always seen as the main go-to thing to do until we started looking at social media and all these other kind of different ways of doing it. But also what's happening as well, one of the biggest trends, and you will probably have noticed this so much during pandemic as well, is a lot of people are spending a lot less time watching live television and looking at places where you would see traditional marketing and advertising, such as newspapers. A lot of those people are consuming content through online streaming services like Spotify for music, Netflix, just YouTube, places like that. So actually, that gives social media networks a brilliant kind of place to advertise on there, which is why paid ads work quite so well. So it's watching this shift and it's seeing where your audience's attention is, because as I say, a lot of people, maybe live TV is just not that interesting, or it's not that convenient, or the shows that they watch are not that engaging to them. So it's kind of important to look at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point actually, because I used to definitely look, as I was going on the tube to work, and they've got all those advertising there, and also when they put new posters on the platform, you go, oh, that's a cool poster or whatever, just you notice, or when it's coming out to holiday season, there's lovely pictures of palm trees and beaches and stuff, like thinking, oh, it's time to book a holiday, and so you get influenced all the time by all of this stuff, and I suppose being locked down, we really only have got what is in our devices that we've got less visibility of all of those things if you're not leaving your home. um, and I suppose that those things are still there, like we're still using billboards, we're still using newspapers, there's still, there's free newspapers and there's magazines, and that hasn't changed, but really, I guess the social media has become more accessible, I suppose, to everyone. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's exactly like you say, that a lot of those things still do exist for certain companies, for certain industries, for certain target customers. It works. And a lot of what's happened with kind of editorial with the magazines is they moved online to subscription-based models. So even though you can't pick up a magazine on your way as you pick up your coffee to work, there's a lot of magazines that have basically gone online or kind of changed to subscription-based models, so people can still order them to their houses, which is brilliant. But if you're a startup, you're probably not going to be thinking about doing that because the target audience might have shifted slightly. You don't really know where they are, what's kind of happening, because that industry is transforming. And with social media, it's, as I say, it's bringing a lot of different people coming in to advertise. And there's so many different places that are trying to catch our attention. Like, as I say, you're listening to Spotify, you're hearing ads, unless you're paying for, the premium version, about all these other things that you would not usually hear ads about, because people are trying to advertise and market their businesses in the best way they can during this pandemic. And one of the other things that comes up with social media a lot, and I've heard it time and time again, year and year again, being in the industry for so long, is how it can have quite a negative influence on emotional and mental well-being. I think it's always quite important to address because, especially with the younger audience and people who just kind of go on social media to just chill out, or kind of at the end of their day, or take a break from what is for something else they're doing on their screen, it's important to realize that that's still influencing you. That's kind of the new media that's affecting you. And it can have a negative effect, but if you do know that, there's certain things that don't make you feel good, it's very easy to just unfollow an account, because it's very, very, very simple to kind of consume media, compare ourselves, think, even as a business, you could be following a bunch of other businesses or competitors in your field and thinking, why am I not there? Why is this not working for me? What am I doing wrong? When really it's just the fact that you are on your own entrepreneurial journey, and some things will take time, some things you're learning. So it's one of the things that I often say when I kind of hear that criticism, that it's very easy to unfollow anything that doesn't make you feel good. And I've actually been in one of those places myself, where I used to, open up my Instagram and think, oh, well, I'm not on that beach. And again, really simple system, actually. Unfollow that account. And it doesn't mean that it's, there's anything wrong with that account, but actually maybe I'm just that kind of person that I don't want to see a picture of a beach when I've been stuck indoors for the last 9 months. But there's so many other positive accounts, and there's so much, what I'm really loving seeing in social media is how much more authentic and how much more kind of vulnerable and honest people are slowly becoming, posting, I don't know, whether it's posting makeupless selfie, or whether it's talking about some of the challenges that they've been through in 2020. I think a lot of people are slowly moving towards that, and it's so nice to see that. And I think it's very, as I say, it's very simple to unfollow something that doesn't make you feel good, and follow something that kind of does make you feel like you do want to get out of bed in the morning. It gives you that extra burst, it gives you some inspiration. So it's just, be aware of it, because just because we're not watching TV, we're getting a lot of stuff for our phone. So we need to, it's okay to set time limits and filters on how and what we consume, because that's our new medium. That's our new kind of, big voice that's shouting on the TV saying, follow this and this is cool. And it's like, well, you don't have to listen to that. You can choose to filter that. That's okay.
Yeah, and yeah, that's brilliant. And I really love that you pointed out that aspect around well-being, and to look after yourself and notice what is happening. But also even maybe noticing what ads you like, or what brands you like, or what images look, that does help, doesn't it? To, as you're scrolling past, like say, yeah, maybe I need to unfollow a few things as well, because I think, well, that doesn't make, I'm scrolling rather than consuming. So it's not for me, I guess, in some ways. So maybe I should look at that for myself.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to get into kind of a lot more technical detail, is if you do unfollow an account, then the algorithm kind of takes that into account. So it's kind of maybe not so great for the company in the short term, but in the long term, it means that they're more likely to be able to attract the right audience. There's no point of you following them and consuming their content, or as you say, scrolling, not really consuming their content, if you're never going to be interested in what they do and not buying
Yeah.
from them. And at the same time, for yourself, it kind of opens up that space of, okay, well, I've unfollowed a bunch of accounts, but actually maybe I'm not following the kind of things that make me feel good, the things that I'm interested in. So it's a great opportunity to go out there and find a bunch of new accounts. And if we're talking about Instagram, the explore tab makes that really simple. If you like a couple of things consistently on, over 2-3 days, if you check back your explore tab, all that new content will have changed, and you'll have kind of new suggestions for something that might be a bit more interesting for yourself, and that will lift your spirits. Because I think everything that's happened and everything that's going on, it's so important to look after your emotional mental health, if it's more than anything, because that will influence how and what you do, and it's such a huge part of your life.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And it is getting better. It is getting bigger. But that's a great point that you make, because maybe people haven't thought about that. That's, the impact that they're having on social media, and that they can choose and do something for themselves there. So thanks for that good tip there for all the audience. So just thinking about also, well, are there some things, I mean, I've got a question here that says, are there some things that you've tried that you had to abandon and, change direction in relation to going online? Or, like you said, you used to have face-to-face connections with people and you've had to go online. So I suppose in the beginning, or can you think of anything that kind of you started to work on and you're like, this doesn't work for me, and, had to come up and innovate with a new thing to do?
Yeah, so I can think of something that I first kind of almost bought into. And for me, that was, in order to be online, I need to be posting a certain amount of times a day, and I need to be, always showcasing myself as kind of doing a bunch of selfies and trying to make my business successful that way. So those were the first two things that I learned that didn't work for me. Even though I am passionate about social media and I constantly have to learn about it, I don't want to be posting 3 times a day, because that significantly reduces the amount of time I'm out there actually getting new clients, creating new coaching content, and running other parts of my business. So I trialed not having to post that many times a day and figured out a strategy for myself, again through trial and error, about how often I can post a week on a consistent basis, where I'm still delivering value and I'm not just posting for posting's sake, because the algorithm is going to kind of try and is going to kind of favor my posts. And I realized that that was actually a lot more better for my engagement, because my content provided more value. I was able to spend more time on it and give people really useful things, as opposed to just posting for the sake of posting. And secondly, the selfie aspect. A lot of people don't like being on camera and don't like being behind the screen. And like I said, I used to be one of those where I just felt more natural and authentic, just kind of connecting one-on-one with people. And I felt that it gave me more time to run social media for other people instead of having to build up my account, which is, like, as I say, I'm doing now. So I noticed straight away that just because you post selfies, you might get a lot of likes, but you're not necessarily converting into comments. They're not necessarily starting engaging conversations. They're not sending you messages. They're not interested in what you're doing. But people kind of have this belief, again, another myth about social media, that you have to post selfies to be successful. That's not necessarily the case. You could be having a really successful product, or you could have an incredible coaching business where you've put together a brilliant program, and you could be posting, giving away free coaching advice. It's always important, I say, to kind of at least at some point do introductory post, maybe like have an image of you, at least one, where they say, where you kind of introduce yourself as a coach, or kind of as the person behind the company, because people still want that, have that connection and get to know you. But that doesn't mean you need to be posting selfies every single time. That doesn't need to be your post. If you're not comfortable and if you don't want to do that, and actually if you can showcase your service or product using, even stock images, if that's all you have time to do, then do that, because you're going to do that consistently and you can connect with people that way. So I think that that's another kind of myth that you have to bust, because when a lot of people look at these accounts, they look at their follower numbers, and they see a lot of selfies, and it's people who have successfully built their businesses, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you need to do. And actually, it's a really great question that you asked me, because one of the things that's happened is social media has been around for some time. So these algorithms and platforms change a lot of the time. So maybe what used to be super successful before is not necessarily so successful now. For example, when Instagram started, all you could do is post a photo. Now you can post videos, you've got IGTV, you've got reels, you've got stories. There's so many different options. So obviously the posts are not getting as much attention because people are looking at so many other features on the platform, right? So you just kind of have to take those things into account. Doesn't have to be all selfies.
No, well, no, that's in one way that's good news, but it also just highlights that there are so many different aspects in and opportunities really for advertising that are available on multiple of these platforms. There are different ways of doing things, and maybe variety is what's best in some ways. Like in your, if you choose one platform, still thinking about that model, that you don't just do post or selfie, one after the other kind of thing. So mix it up a little bit so it's interesting.
And one other thing you kind of reminded me on when you were just talking about that now is the way social media is different to traditional kind of billboard marketing and advertising is when when you pay for an ad on TV or on a billboard, your customers have one place, one point where they can see you. So you really got to think creatively about, how do I cram everything I possibly in? How do I get them to know the price? What is it that we offer? How do you stand out? How do you make yourself look unique? But the brilliant thing with social media is you can't just post kind of super promotional material about yourself all the time, because again, people don't want to be sold at. People don't want kind of others shouting at them saying, oh my gosh, come buy this, come buy the service, we're great at this, come buy. No, you're not going to find that really interesting. People like social media, and why it works so well is because before all the marketers like me came on, and before we started all the ads, it was an interesting platform to consume content. And so with social media, we've really had to think more about our content and our content strategy. And that's what I mean when I say add value. Don't just sell, 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 add value. So if, for example, you teach people how to, eat healthier, or there's a particular type of diet you offer, then you can offer them tips around the other things they could do to improve their diet. It's not just about buy my product, buy my shake, buy my program. You could give them other nutritional advice. You could take a look at what else they're interested in. So for example, somebody who's interested in a diet, they might be interested in nutrition, they might be interested in exercise, they might be interested in things like, well, what else can you do to help improve your diet, such as get better sleep, stay hydrated. There's so much different advice and content and value that you can add to them, which is really important to think of when you're thinking of, well, what content can I put out there? It's not just sell, sell, sell. It's about all the other elements as well of how you can really deliver that value, because especially if you're in the service industry, it's about serving other people. It's about, why do they want to come to you? They don't necessarily just have that one snapshot of you just to get to know you anymore. There's so many different things you could tell them about yourself and about what you offer, and just kind of add value to their life that way. And that's how you build trust with them as well. That's how eventually they'll want to buy that program or that product from you.
Yeah, amazing. There's so much here. There's just so much. And you're right, it is about, helping people, isn't it? I mean, people go on those platforms for and maybe look for tips or advice or guidance. I mean, that's what we use Google for, isn't it, as well? I want to know about this, so I go and put a search and see what sites come up that can give me some info. Like maybe it's Wikipedia. Like I know when you were talking earlier about TikTok, I'm thinking I should just go to Wikipedia and just see what they say about this social media platform. And that's because there will be commentary in there, that might be describing things. So yeah, we consume everything through these devices, and like you say, it's better to be giving like some value, teaching people, giving them some tips rather than just selling at them, because I'd be unfollowing an account if it was just selling at me, really. Like you say, especially if people are going on there for that wind down and just to be able to scroll and be entertained. Wow, selling is just going to push them over the edge.
And there are really interesting ways that you can talk about that, and it depends kind of what strategy you put together. There's always a mix of things you could have. So maybe once every 2 weeks you tell them about this amazing product or program you have, and other times you could be offering value. So it's always keeping that ratio. What's kind of the industry suggestion and industry standard is keep your sales posts and your sales content to maybe like about 30-20%, and 70% of the time it should be about adding value and about giving people useful feedback and advice. And actually, another thing worth mentioning about what you just mentioned is, you can always go away and Google things, but always consider the source. If you're going to go away and, for example, as I was saying, look for a social media coach, but you're not going to go into that specific industry platform, you might just going to Google one. Always consider the source. Whether it's a news outlet, whether it's somebody, because it's so easy to set up a platform, a website, and make yourself sound like an expert. Check people's credentials. If there's somebody who's very legitimate, they're more likely to be on more than one social media network, maybe have a website of their own, maybe have a look at their LinkedIn profile as well. Maybe you can see some of their work history. So always consider the source, because it's very easy to say, oh, I've heard something, or my friend said this, or my dad said this, but really, just because they said it, does that make it true? And especially if you're going to follow their advice for something like business or marketing, it's always so important to check out your source. And I think that's something else that kind of gets forgotten about in social media. Sometimes you read the post and you'll think, oh gosh, this is happening, or this is how things are. But it's like, well, check that account. Who are they? Who do they say they are? Does this seem realistic? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things that's always worth kind of considering.
So yeah, don't blindly just believe and consume, which is true in all of our lives, really. So if people want to get in contact with you, how's the best way for them to do that?
So I think the easiest way, because I focus so much on Instagram, is to just send me a direct message on Instagram. So it's creation and underscore of underscore so on there. I'm present on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter as well, but I'm sure we can always post the links for that when we kind of post the video, to make it really easy for you to just click on. So the banner you see here, as well as my Facebook page banner, you can always find me that way as well. And yeah, just send me a question, start a conversation. There's a lot of free advice I offer, and there's lots of different packages to suit everyone. So let's start the conversation and see how I can help.
Wonderful. And just on that, I was just thinking, like, when we were talking about Googling stuff, I was thinking actually Googling is almost like, you could Google for a coach there, but thinking about what you were talking about, maybe you're actually better off going and looking at coaches on Instagram, or because there's more of them there maybe, and you might be able to get some tips or get some insights of, like you were talking about earlier, try to connect with someone who you resonate with. So that might be a little bit better for you. So maybe don't discount social media to help solve the problem, like to look for the people who can be the experts on those platforms to help solve your problem.
It's true. I mean, if you think about it, people actually do that. So when I need to find something, a lot of the time, instead of Googling it, especially if it's business related, I will search for it on Instagram and think about all those how-to videos. We go on YouTube to watch how to make a particular recipe. We don't go on Google anymore. So of course, for really established social media networks, it's a really brilliant tool to use them essentially as a search engine.
Wonderful. So thanks very much for your time here tonight. We have got to our 1 hour already, and I could talk to you for another hour probably with all the questions that we've got, and the conversation's gone really well. But what I am going to just say to people is we will post all these on all of the platforms so that people can get the tips that we've talked about and shared with them tonight, and be able to connect with you to get some support and help for their business.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for having me and for doing this coffee chat. It's been really fun to do this.
Lovely. So